Hello Mrityunjay. Rest of the people, please be live. Good morning, Ashok, Vivek, Mahesh Kumar ji, Sai Kumar Patnayak. A very good morning to all of you. Happy Durga Puja to all. Good morning, Nagendra Prasad ji, Naresh. Good morning, Avinash ji. Same to you, Pankaj ji. Good morning. Okay, so let's start the today's session. Can you please tell me which of the Governor General in India started the civil services? Civil services in India was started during the tenure of which Governor General? All of you, please. I have asked you something. Mincy, you have the answer of Cornwallis. Lakshmi Priya, you also have the answer of I am making the public view so that you all can see. Rest of the people, can't you answer exactly? The civil services was started by the Lord Cornwallis. Can you tell me one thing? In India, the Sati Pratha, the Thagi Pratha, all these were abolished by which of the Governor General? Who abolished the Sati Pratha and the Thags Pratha? No, it was not Dalhousie. It was Lord William Bentinck. It was by Lord William Bentinck. Exactly, Pankaj, you are exactly correct. Next question is that who introduced the policy of subsidiary alliance? Who introduced the policy of subsidiary alliance? Which governor came up with the policy of subsidiary alliance? Avinash Kumar, you have the answer of Wellesley. Rest of the people, some people have posted me Warren Hastings. Guys, answer me very quickly. You people are not revising the facts. The correct answer is the Wellesley. He introduced the which thing? Policy of subsidiary alliance. Can you tell me the dual government system in Bengal was started by which Governor General? Dual government system in Bengal was started by which Governor General? Dual government system. Very good. You people are right. It was by the Robert Clive. Exactly. You people are absolutely correct. It was by Robert Clive. Next important is that, can you tell me who ended the dual government system in Bengal and was the last Governor General of Bengal and the first Governor General of India who ended the dual government system in Bengal and separated the functioning of executive and legislative body, and was also the last Governor General of Bengal and the first Governor General in India. Was it Warren Hastings or William Bentinck? Exactly, it's the Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings. Can you tell me Afghan War of 1842 was fought during which Governor General? Anyone? Was it Auckland? I'm giving you the option. Was it Allenborough or was it Metcalfe? Was it Lord Auckland? It was Allenborough or Metcalfe? If anyone can say me. The Afghan war was by the Auckland. It was by whom? Auckland. The perfect answer is the Auckland. And what about the first Sikh war? First Sikh war was fought with Maharaja Dilip Singh, and it was during the tenure of which governor? The Sikh war. Very good. It was Hardinge. Always remember one thing. On the Sikh, there was a hard rule. So it was Hardinge. You people are absolutely correct. So guys, and can you tell me who was that Governor General who set up the Committee for the Development of Education in India? Who was that Governor General who set up the Committee for the Development of Education in India? That was given the name Woods Dispatch Commission. Woods Dispatch Committee. This was set up by which of the following Governor General? Woods Dispatch Committee for the reform in the education system. No, the codification of law was given by Macaulay, and Education System Reform Committee was set up by Dalhousie. I told you in the last class that railway construction, then we have telegram, then we have the postal system. All these were given by the whom? You will say it's the Lord Dalhousie. And also important thing was the doctrine of lapse. Doctrine of lapse was also given by Dalhousie, subsidiary alliance by the Wellesley. All the things are important. And Lord Cornwallis, give me the Faisal Haqji, tell me please. Now come to the next one. You see, Lord Canning, he was from the tenure of 1856 to 1862. You remember one thing, revolt of 1857, that was given the name Sepoy Mutiny. I will tell you about this revolt in the next class. We'll discuss all the revolt in the same chapter. So first of all, I am finishing with all the Governor Generals and Viceroy of India and the Council Acts. Then I will teach you about the revolts. Then we have Congress and everything. So just after the first Scipio Mutiny of 1857, it was realized by the Britishers. Try to understand one thing. It was realized by the Britishers that if the unity among all the community in India continued, it will be hard to rule India for a longer period. And Britishers never wanted to lose British India as a colony because it proved to be a very profitable business in India. That is why in the Charter Act of 1833, it was told that the monopoly of trade in India will continue for an unlimited period of time. But I told you the monopolies with trade in tea and trade with China was ended. So thus after the revolt of 1857, there will be a treaty signed called Treaty of Allahabad at the 1858, and this Treaty of Allahabad of 1858, just after the revolt of 1857, will shift the power of company to the crown. It means just after the revolt of 1857, all the administrative power of British East India Company, try to understand, all the administrative power of British East India Company will pass to which one? Then you will say British Crown. It means the British Parliament will now decide the law, will decide the rule, and will decide all the administrative reforms for the British India province. So you can say after the revolt of 1857, the power of the East India Company will decrease and the power of the British Crown, or you can say the British Parliament, will increase. It means the East India's Company will be, from the administration part of view, they will be removed, and the British Parliament and the British government will directly come to rule the British India. Now you see, the last Governor General and the first Viceroy was the Lord Canning. During his tenure, University of Calcutta, Bombay and Madras were established in 1857. I was just trying to make you understand one thing. After the Treaty of Allahabad of 1858, after the revolt of 1857, the post of Governor General of India was abolished and the post of Viceroy of India was created. So remember one thing, there was a hierarchy in which on the top it will be British Crown, whether it is Queen or King. Below the British Crown will be the British Parliament. Below the Parliament we have a Secretary of State, taken up, and below the Secretary of State there will be a Viceroy. So this decentralized administrative structure was formed just after the revolt of 1857, and as a result of which Lord Canning was the last Governor General and he was also the first Viceroy of India. During his tenure from 56 to 62, this is very important, just 1 year before the revolt of 57 he was made the Governor General. Just after the revolt of 1857 and Treaty of Allahabad, the post of Governor General will be abolished and the post of Viceroy will be created for the India. It means this Viceroy will be responsible for all the administrative reform, all the administrative decision that was to be taken into the British India province. So remember one thing, this Viceroy will report the Secretary of State, this Secretary of State will report to the Parliament, and this Parliament will inform to the British Crown. So we can say the East India Company is nowhere in this list of decentralization. So it was believed by the British Parliament that the British East India Company has failed to administer Indian provinces, as a result of which now they are no longer responsible to administer the Indian provinces. That is why the power from crown to company, remember this word, the power from crown to company was handed over under the tenure of Lord Canning just after the Treaty of Allahabad. Remember one thing, and during his tenure, University of Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, remember BMC, Bombay, Madras and Calcutta, were established in 1857. He withdrew the doctrine of lapse policy. Revolt of 1857, that is mutiny, took place. Indian Penal Code 1860 was passed. It means legal laws were passed. passed the Government of India Act 1858, which ended the rule of East India Company in India. I told you na, in 1858 there will be a treaty, there will be a Government of India Act 1858, which will end the rule of East India Company and transfer the power from company to crown. Don't forget this line. The power will be transferred from company to the which one? Crown. An Indian Council Act was passed in 1861. Okay, na? During whose tenure? Lord Canning. So we will be have Government of India Act 1858, which will allow the transfer of power from company to crown, and second was the Indian Council Act of 1861. Then we have one more important thing, that is what? You have to remember the 3 universities will be established at Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Doctrine of lapse will be withdrawn, and the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 will take place during the Lord Canning. Remember one thing, under the Indian Council Act of 1861, the Legislative Council had limited role. It was chiefly advisory. It means we have 2 important. So we have one was the, at the top of it we have the Viceroy in India. He has 2 important: Legislative Council, and second it was the Executive Council. 2 councils were there. Legislative means one who makes the law. It means power to make the law, and executive means power to implement the law. So law making one was the power to implement the law. So the Viceroy Executive Council was divided into 2 parts: Legislative Executive Council and the Legislative Council and the Executive Council. Wherever the word come legislative, it means if the Viceroy is to make any of the laws or is to implement any of the law in Indian colony, in the British Indian colony, then he must have the advice of the legislative. But remember one thing, the role of the legislature, the role of the legislature is only to advise the Viceroy. What is to advise the Viceroy? It means he can only give the suggestions, but whether those suggestions will be accepted or not, it all depends on the Viceroy. Remember one thing, the British Parliament will never give power to one man or one individual so that they can dictate the policies of the British Parliament. That is why when Viceroy Council was divided into legislative and executive, legislative were only made which thing? Advisory in nature. It means their advice or decisions were not binding on the Viceroy, was not compulsory on the Viceroy. It was up to the will and wishes of the Viceroy whether to accept it or reject it. And what about executive? Executive councils were the councils of the officers who were given the laws to just implement in India. So remember one thing, under the Indian Council Act of 1861, the legislative councils had the which nature? Advisory. Remember one thing, even though Indians were also nominated, but there was no statutory provision for the inclusion of Indians in it. The power of ordinance given to the Governor General gave him absolute powers. Not the power of ordinance given to the Governor General gave him the absolute powers. It means now in place of Governor General we have the post of which one? Viceroy. It means if any law is to be made in India, the entire power was, what is the ordinance? Ordinance means power to make or pass any law. So in Indian province, the power to make or pass any of the law was completely invested into the which one? Viceroy. So Viceroy was made the ultimate individual and he was given all the powers to make the law, implement the law, to pass the ordinance, ठीक है ना, at any given point of time. Got it, guys? So you can simply understand one thing, कि by the Indian Council Act of 1861, the Legislative Council was made advisory to the Governor, to the Viceroy, and Indians were also nominated into this particular thing. And third important thing is that the Viceroy of India was given the absolute power with respect to making of the law, implementing of the law. After Canning, and remember one thing, under Lord Canning, in 1861, there one more thing was done, that Archaeological Survey of India was also established. If the question comes, द आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया, जो भारत का पुरातात्विक विभाग है, आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया विच लुक्स आफ्टर द you can say excavation of the historical sites, excavation of the cultural sites to study the history of India. It was established in the which year? 1861, during the tenure of Lord Canning. So you have also to remember this particular thing. Now we have Lord Elgin. He was from 1862 to 1864. 1862 to 1864, it was Lord Elgin. Wahhabi movement by Sayyid Ahmad and High Courts was set up in the year 1862 at Calcutta, followed by Bombay and Madras. This is very important. ठीक है ना? Do you know what is Wahhabi movement? Wahhabi movement is basically, it was an Islamic movement. Islamic movement just for the promotion of Muslim religion and you can say brotherhood among all Indian communities. It was started by Sir Sayyid Ahmad, ठीक है ना? And this Sayyid Ahmad will later on establish the Aligarh Muslim University as well. The only thing for which Lord Elgin is known as that during his tenure in 1862, the high courts were set up in India at three places, that is Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. And during Canning, we will be having the establishment of three universities at the Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. The universities will set up at Bombay, Madras and Calcutta by Lord Canning, and in 1862, the high courts will be set up at Calcutta, Bombay and Madras during the Lord Elgin. This is very important. So if the question comes, which is the oldest high court in India, then you will say it's the Calcutta, followed by Bombay and Madras. CBM. First is Calcutta, then is Bombay, then is Madras. This is the chronology that you need to understand. The first and the oldest high court is Calcutta, second oldest is Bombay, and then we have the Madras. So we can write three important high courts: Calcutta, Bombay and Madras. Lord Elgin. Then we have the Lord John Lawrence. He was from 1864 to 1869. Telegraphic communication was opened with Europe and created the Indian Forest Department. This is very important. Indian Forest Department, जो भारतीय वन विभाग था, Indian Forest Department was created by which of the following Governor General, and telegraphic communication with the Europe was started by whom? So you can say two important thing: telegraphic communication and Indian Forest Department were established during the tenure of Lord John Lawrence, and he ruled from 1864 to 1869. So first of all, we have 1856 to 1862, 1862 to 1864, and then we have 1864 to 1869. This is the way we are moving towards the formation of the Indian National Congress. We have to reach up to 1885, that is up to Lord Dufferin. We have to move up to Lord Dufferin when he will be establishing he will play an instrumental role in establishing the Indian National Congress. So right now we are into the which year? 1869. So remember one thing, the telegraphic communication with the Europe and the Indian Forest Department were started during Lawrence. The High Court was during Lord Elgin, and three universities were during the Lord Canning. Is it clear, guys? So if the question comes during whose tenure the three universities were formed at the Bombay, Madras and Calcutta, you will say it was Lord Canning, who was the last Governor General of India and the first Viceroy in India. Last Governor General and the last Governor General of India and the first Viceroy in India. That you have to remember. And second is Lord John Lawrence from 1864 to 1869. During his tenure, we have two important things that has happened. That one is the telegraphic communication, and second is the creation of the Indian Forest Department. Creation of the Indian Forest Department. Got it, guys? Don't forget this. John Lawrence. Then we have Lord Mayo. Next important is the Lord Mayo from 1869 to 1873. First of all, he organized the Statistical Survey of India, and for the first time in Indian history, a census was held in 1871. But most of the books you can find the census was first held in 1872, and it was during the Lord Mayo. It was during the Lord Mayo. So he organized the Statistical Survey of India, and for the first time in Indian history, a census was held in 1870. The first census in India, remember, it was in 1871-72. He established the Department of Agriculture and Commerce. He established the Rajkot College at Kathiawar and Mayo College at Ajmer for the Indian princes, and he was the only viceroy to be murdered in office by a Pathan convict in the Andamans in 1872. We have very important things coming up. Tell me, Vivek, what is the doubt in universities? No, it was not in 1865, Mr. Avinash. You can check the facts with the NCERT. When you will go through the class 10th NCERT, you will come to realize, you will come to know that in India, the universities were first set up at the Bombay, then Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Don't get confused. And Vivek, what is the doubt in the universities? No, Lord Canning will be for the universities. Lord Canning will be for the universities. Universities, Lord Canning, and remember, High Courts will be Elgin. High Courts will be Elgin. I'm just telling you. Now we have the Lord Mayo. So you have to simply understand three important things. And one more thing. I told you Archaeological Survey of India was also during the Lord Canning in 1861. Now come to the next fact. It is written here. If the question comes, the first census in India, the first process to have the head count in India, or the first process to calculate or to estimate what is the exact population of the nation, was started by Lord Mayo in 1871-72. In 1871-72. Then during his tenure, we have the establishment of the Department of Agriculture and also the Department of Commerce, because India was in that during the British India time, most of the main practice of India, or we can say the main livelihood perspective of the India was which one? Agricultural. So that is why you have to remember one thing. In order to promote and have development in the agriculture sector, especially in the cotton textiles, they started a Department of Agriculture so that they can estimate that what exact amount of land is under irrigation, what is under non-irrigated irrigation, what is the amount of land which is barren, how much is the productive land, how much farmers are landless farmers, how many are marginal farmers, how many are small farmers. So in order to categorize all these things and in order to develop and reform the agriculture sector, they started a Department of Agriculture. And with this agriculture, they used to get the raw materials which they can utilize for the agri-based industries like sugar industry, then cotton textile industry, for which they established the Commerce Department. Then two important colleges, just in order to educate the Indian princes, because I told you when Wellesley started the subsidiary alliance policy, then we have many of the princely states in India. And remember one thing, when Britishers were ruling, there were 562 princely states. So when it comes to princely states, in Hindi we call it Rajware. What is Rajware? Those important regions which were ruled by a king, monarch, or the small princes. But so India was basically divided into 562 small provinces. They were directly under the control of the monarch, that was called as the princely states. And remember one thing, apart from these 562 princely states, there were 11 provinces. There were 11 provinces in India which was directly under the control of British rule, which was directly under the control of British rule. So these 11 provinces, it didn't have any of the princes, it did not have any of the monarchs. They were directly ruled by the British Parliament with their rules, regulations, laws. So all the revolt that took place in India, that was to free these 11 provinces and to integrate these princely states with the India, and just allow these princely states to withdraw their support from the British East India Company, because it was very hard to rule all these 562 and 11 provinces by a foreign ruler or by a foreign power just sitting from London. Okay, na? So what they did, when they started the subsidiary alliance policy, then through that policy they integrated all these princely states with the British rule. Okay, na? And in lieu of that, they promised the princely states that they are not going to attack the princely states, they are not going to harm the princely states, and whatever produce they are going to provide to the British East India Company, they will be given the shares as well. So remember one thing, so 562 princely states were there. So when these princely states were loyal to the Britishers, so in order to educate their child, they came up with the two important colleges. One college was established in the Rajkot, that is in the Kathiawar, and second was the Mayo College at Ajmer for the Indian princes. This was the female college. Don't worry, don't confuse with that. Next important thing is that he was the only viceroy to be murdered in office by a Pathan convict in the Andamans in 1872. So if the question comes, which Governor General was murdered by or killed by was killed in the office itself, then you will say it was, and he was killed on 8th February 1872. February 1872, and he was killed by Sher Ali Afridi, commonly known as Sher Ali. Sher Ali Afridi, also known as Sher Ali. 8th February 1872, known as Sher Ali Afridi or Sher Ali. He was an Afghani. He was a Afghani Pathan, and he was at that time a prisoner in the Andaman jails, and that is why he breached that jail security, and he was successful in killing the particular thing. Got it, guys? So Lord Mayo was killed by Sher Ali Afridi on 8th Feb 1872 in the Andaman itself when he was in his office. And Sher Ali was a Afghani Pathan. Pathan is one of the caste in the Muslims. Done, everybody? Can we move on? Next, okay. So after that we have Lord Mayo. Lord Northbrook. Got it, guys? Now you see, this Northbrook was the Viceroy of India from 1872 to 1876. Okay, na? And during him, a very important movement took place in Punjab that was given the name Cuca Rebellion. Okay, na? Remember one thing. This particular movement was started in 1840 in the Western Punjab by Bhagat Jawahar Mal. Jawaharlal. It was initially a religious movement. It was initially a religious movement just in order to protect the rights of the Sikh. And this particular movement was just started. This particular movement, Cuca movement, which was first a religious movement to propagate Sikhism in the entire region, this further became a social movement. This religious movement turned into a social movement. It mainly focused on four important things. That is, to eliminate caste system in Sikhs. First of all, to eliminate caste system in Sikhs. This is the first important thing. The second objective of this particular movement was to create a society based on equality. It focused on the women empowerment and women equality. Second important thing, it discouraged consumption of alcohol and any of the intoxicating drinks and non-vegetarian. So we can say the Cuca movement, which was first started as a religious movement, later on became a social movement, social reform movement, which focused on five things. That is, to eliminate caste system. First of all, to eliminate the caste system. Second important thing was that to promote the women empowerment and to promote women equality. Third important thing is to discourage the people from the consumption of alcohol, non-vegetarians and intoxication. Remember one thing, one of the famous leader of this particular Cuca rebellion was the Ram Singh. The most important ruler of this social reform was the Ram Singh. He was the most popular ruler of this particular revolt. And when Britishers started to suppress this movement, then this Ram Singh called for the boycott of the British goods. This is the first thing. Boycott of the government schools done by the government post. And that is why this movement came to be suppressed by the Britishers. And who was that Britisher? You will say it was the Northbrook, Lord Northbrook. So during the tenure of the Lord Northbrook in 1872, there was a Cuca rebellion that took place in the Punjab. And remember, Northbrook was successful in suppressing the Cuca rebellion, in which Ram Singh was arrested and then he was deported to Burma, and where he died in 1885. This is very important. So, who was the famous ruler of the Cuca movement or the Cuca rebellion in Punjab? You will say Ram Singh, who was arrested by the Britishers. He was deposed to Burma, it means sent to Burma, and where he died in the which year? 1885. And what is the meaning of famine? What is the meaning of famine? It's drought only, exactly. It's the drought only. Because of the failure of the monsoon, the people were dying in absence of the food. So it was Northbrook, the famous famine of Bihar and the Cuca rebellion of Punjab. Is it clear, guys? Any doubt? Any query, any question, you can just ask me. No, you see, the Cuca movement started in 1840. If the question comes, when did the Cuca movement started in Punjab, you will say 1840. This is the first important thing. And second important thing, कि the Cuca Revolt, what was the period of the Cuca Revolt? There you will say कि it started in 1863 and it was suppressed in 1872 by Northbrook. And what was that revolt? So in the revolt included boycott of British schools, posts, then we have clothes, and this revolt was started by Ram Singh. He was the prominent leader. Is it clear now? The Britishers were against the Cuca movement because unless until it was a social movement, they didn't have any of the problem. When it became a movement which started to boycott the British rules and regulations, British established schools, British government organization, British run government departments like post, and British produced clothes, then it became the rebellion. Rebellion simply means कि when you are not abiding, when you are not following, when you are not obeying the rules and regulations set by a British East India Company, then it becomes the revolt. Is it clear, guys? Any other question you can ask me? No, Bhagat Jawahar Mal did not started the Cuca Revolt. The Bhagat Jawahar Mal started the Cuca movement, which was a social reform movement. Rahul, please try to understand. And the Cuca Revolt, which focused on the boycott of British schools, British posts, British clothes, that was what? Then you will say that was the revolt one. Good, done. Chalo, come to next one. Now we have one of the most infamous Viceroy of in India, and he was the Lord Lytton. Remember one thing, he was such a Viceroy in India who is known for one thing in this country, कि he had a very reactionary policy, or he has got a very opposite policy related to the Indian administration. You see, he is known as the Viceroy of reverse character. I told you reverse is what? Reactionary. It means he was one of the cruel Viceroy India has got. Royal Titles Act of 1876 and the assumption of the title of Empress of India by Queen Victoria, the Delhi Darbar in January 1877 was held during the Lord Lytton. You see, this man Lord Lytton conducted a royal darbar in January 1877 at Delhi, when in 1876 the Queen Victoria adopted a title of Empress of India. Try to understand this. In 1876, the British Queen Victoria took a title known as Empress of India, and in honor of that, a Delhi Darbar. What is Darbar? A royal procession, a royal ceremony was held in January 1877. And despite the fact that during this year of 1877, there was a lot of famine, drought, epidemic that had happened in India, and in spite of that particular thing, this man Lytton instead of looking for the welfare of the people of this country, he organized a royal darbar on one side, and on the other side, the people of this country were going into the mouth of the death because of the famine situation, drought situation, epidemic, because of the death of the animals and the humankind. It means the entire country was under a malnourishment situation because of the lesser productivity of the agricultural fields due to the natural disasters like famine and drought. And in that scenario, instead of taking care of these people, he organized a royal darbar in 1877. That is one of the infamous incident that he started, that is Lord Lytton. And he passed a Vernacular Pace Act of 1878. This is very important. Under this act, what is vernacular? That is the local language, 1878. And he ordered that only those newspapers can be published in India which will be published in English. It means all newspaper which were published in the local languages, suppose Marathi languages, Odia languages, Bengali language, Hindi, all these newspapers were to be banned. Why? Because Lytton came to understand one thing. By the year of 1880, when we are inching towards the formation of Indian National Congress, then he thought the Indian masses are being educated, the Indian masses are being made aware, the Indian masses are being, you can say, informed, not by were being educated by the means of the, which were newspaper writings by the great leaders of that particular time or that particular era. So he came to understand that if this particular Vernacular Press Act is not implemented, because you know it, Indian masses were not very much comfortable in English. They were not very much comfortable in Hindi at that point of time, but they were very much comfortable in their local languages. So at that time, in order to educate the Indian masses, in order to make the people aware about the we can say cruelty of the Britishers, about the bad laws of the Britishers, all the educated readers used to write an editorial page in their local language newspaper, so that people can read it, they can understand it, and they can feel that the entire problem in India is because of the British rule, so that they can convince people to organize mass movement against the Britishers, and the Britishers can be dragged out of the country. So when Lytton came to understand this very thing, that this newspaper is the main medium of communication to the common mass, so he thought to cut that communication. So he came up with the Vernacular Pace Act of 1878, in which it was made clear, he directed that all the newspapers except which is published in English language were to be banned, just in order to stop the communication between educated Indian mass and those Indian masses who were made aware or who were made educated, just in order to try to understand, just in order to enhance the sense of awakening, enhance the sense of, we can say, communication against the British rule. Is that clear to everybody? Is the Vernacular Pace Act clear to all of you? And remember one thing, because of the passing of this Vernacular Pace Act, there was a newspaper at that time which was Amrit Bajar Patrika, and this Amrit Bajar Patrika was basically a Hindu newspaper, and overnight it was converted into English. What is Royal Title Act? Royal title is what? What is royal? Monarch. It means when the monarch of any country adopts any of the title of his own choice, that is called the Royal Title Act. Why Lytton will be against Britishers? Barsa Vaishali ji, have I told that Lytton is favoring the Britishers? The concept that I have orated here, is it against the Britisher? He was favoring the Britishers. He was against the Indians. Lytton was against the Indian. He was not against the Britishers. That is why the India was reeling under the famine and drought condition, and instead of serving the India, he organized the Royal Darbar, and he also put a ban on the publication of all other local newspapers in their local languages, ठीक है ना, just in order to stop the communication between the common masses. So how can Lytton be against the Britisher? He was supporting the Britishers beyond his limitation, and he was just against the Indian masses, just in order to stop the Indian mass movement against the Britisher. He was not against the Britisher. Barsa, is it clear to you? You have misunderstood the fact. I will come to that reason ki why Indian National Congress was established. That is why Mr. Vivek, he is called as a man of reverse character. Why man of reverse character? Because he was not favoring the Indian masses, but he was serving the British East India. Okay, and during his tenure, there was also one act called as Arms Act was passed in 1878, which made it mandatory for Indians to acquire license in arms. In fact, possession of arm, it means any individual or any Indian who were holding the arms in his hands or were having arms in their house must have the license for it. And why it was done? So that the young revolutionary of that time or the revolutionaries of that period should not have possession of any arms in their home, in their house or in their hand, and there should not be any infamous incident of murdering. So remember, two cruel acts were passed by Lord Lytton in India, and both were in 1878. One was the Vernacular Pace Act of 1878 and second was the Arms Act of 1878, which made it mandatory for the Indians to acquire license in the possession of arms. And also, he reduced the maximum age for Indians to qualify the civil services from 21 to 19 years. And why he reduced? Because at the age of 19 years, no one can be, most of the peoples were not able to be graduate, and in order to qualify the civil services, a person or individual must be a graduate. So by this age, most of the Indians were not able to graduate. That is why he reduced the age from 21 to 19, just to stop the Indians to enter into the civil services exam. That is why he is called as the Viceroy of reverse character. It's AVP Pankaj Kumar, you are right. Is it clear? Yes, Vivek, you are true. This is correct. This AVP is same. Is it clear? Lord Lytton. So you can see all the reactionary policies like Vernacular Priests Act, then we have the Arms Act of 1878. These were passed by the Lord Lytton, and that is why he is called as the man of reverse character. Now we are coming to the last one, that is the Lord Ripon. It's more than enough, don't worry. The tenure of Lord Ripon was from 1880 to 1884. He was from 1880 to 1884, and during his tenure, the first Factory Act of 1881 was passed, which prohibited the child labor. Remember one thing, as Lytton was most reactionary to the Indian, Lord Ripon was more favorable to the Indian. More favorable to Indian. Remember, he is one of the, and he is also known as the father of local self-government in India. The Panchayati Raj system was also started by this man. So don't forget this name, this man, he is very much famous. Lord Ripon. अब देखो, this Ripon came up with the Factory Act of 1881, which prohibited the child labor. So it is one of the, you can say, social welfare that was started in India by Lord Ripon, just in order to prohibit the employment of child into any of the jobs. Next is local self-government was introduced in 1882. This is very important, ठीक है ना, which is called as the panchayati system. He told that in order to develop or a panchayati raj system in India was introduced by Lord Ripon in the year 1882. Don't forget this one as well. And he was successful in repealing the Vernacular Pace Act in 1882. The Vernacular Pace Act of 1878, which was passed by Lytton, it was cancelled, or you can say it was repealed by Lord Ripon in 1882. So he did two important measures in 81 and 82. In 1881, he came up with the first Factory Act and prohibited the child labor. This was the first, you can say, step taken towards the welfare of the child in India. And how? Just by prohibiting the child labor, or just by prohibiting the employment, we can say involvement of child into any form of labor in 1881. Then in 1882, he gave the concept of local self-government, that is called the Panchayati Raj system, and he was also successful in repealing the Vernacular Pace Act, which only allowed the publication of the English newspapers. So by repealing the Vernacular Pace Act, now the newspapers were allowed to be published in any of the local language, as it was done before 1878. Then during his tenure, he appointed Sir William Hunter in 1882 to improve the primary and secondary education in India. You see how much reforms he is doing for this country, and it is just because of which he is called as the father of social reform in India. So if the question comes which viceroy in India is known as the father of social reform, you will say Ripon, because in 1881 he came up with the law which prohibited child labor. In 1882 he gave up the concept of Panchayati Raj. He repealed the Vernacular Pace Act, and in 1882 he also appointed William Hunter Commission in order to improve the primary and secondary education. Don't forget this particular important thing. This is very important. In 1882, William Hunter Commission, Sir William Hunter Commission was appointed just to improve the primary and secondary education system of this country. Don't forget, this is very important. Very important. William Hunter Commission. And Ripon's third is the Ilbert Bill controversy of 1883. You see, this Ilbert Bill allowed the Indian judges to try, in fact, the European criminals in their court. It enabled Indian district magistrates to try European criminals. It means the power was given to the Indian judges or the Indian appointed district magistrate, that in their court, if any European is found guilty, if any Indian judge is found guilty, if any European is found guilty, then he can also be tried, and he can also be, you can say, punished by an Indian judge or Indian magistrate, because it was previously written a European can be tried into only European judge court, none other. Is it clear to all of you? Guys, so Ilbert Bill is what? So Ilbert Bill gave the power to Indian magistrate, gave the power to which one? Indian magistrate, for which thing? To try the European convict in their court. To try the European convict in their court. Remember that. All of you, it's clear to all of you? Lord Ripon. Now comes the Lord Dufferin, 1884 to 1888. During his tenure, the Third Burmese War were fought between 1885 to 1886, and he is the man behind the establishment of the Indian National Congress in 1885. This man, Lord Dufferin, was the Viceroy of India from 1884 to 1888. He was the Viceroy of India from 1884 to 1888. Remember one thing. And second is, during his tenure, the Third Burmese War was fought between 1885 to 1886, and he was also instrumental, or he was the main person behind the establishment of the Indian National Congress in 1885. So we can say During the Lord Dufferin, Third Burmese War was fought from 85 to 86, and during his tenure, the establishment of the Indian National Congress also took place. So, guys, this is all about the Viceroy and the Governor General before the establishment of the Indian National Congress. I think it's clear to all of you. The Third Burmese War was between the British and the Burma, Britain and the Burma. Don't forget that. So that's it for the today's class. We will meet on Monday morning.